this as well. I've moved to the afternoons, and I'm so happy to be in the afternoons. Easier to find members of the Senate and the House in the afternoons. One of them, one of our favorite senators, Senator Susan Collins of Maine, joins me. She is now the chair of the Senate Appropriations Committee. Congratulations, Chairwoman Collins. How do you enjoy the new gig? It's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work, but it positions me well to do more for my great state of Maine and for America.
That's.
So I'm very excited about this new position, Hugh.
I want to talk to you about two things in our 10-minute, Senator: the Social Security Fairness Act, in which you had a huge hand, and then about shipbuilding, not just at the Bath Iron Works on the Kennebec, but across the United States. Let's start with the Social Security Fairness Act. What did you want to get done? Did it get done in this act?
There were two provisions in the Social Security law that penalized people who had worked in the public sector, say as police officers, school teachers, school custodians, firefighters, even if they had also earned their Social Security benefits by working in the private sector. In addition, it penalized people whose spouses worked in the private sector if they had worked in the public sector. So, what we did, to make a long story short, is eliminate these two provisions that had been enacted decades ago that unfairly deprived people of Social Security benefits that they had earned. And that's the important thing. Either they or their spouse had earned their Social Security benefits by working 40 quarters, and yet they were being deprived of them, or the amount that they received was greatly reduced in a way that was really unfair. Finally, and this is an issue I've been working on literally for 20 years, we were able to get very strong votes in both the House and the Senate and have the bill signed into law. And I've got to say, give a shout out to J.D. Vance, who was a co sponsor of the bill and came back and helped us lobby for votes on the Senate floor.
I'm glad he did that. This has had a personal impact on my family. My sister-in-law was one of those people whose former husband, now deceased, had worked for the government in the intelligence business, and her Social Security benefits were reduced by that. I never understood that. I just never did, but I'm glad you got it fixed.
It never made sense because we were talking about earned benefits. And it particularly did hurt, for example, a school teacher who spent his or her own whole working life educating our children, was married to a spouse who worked his or her own whole life in the private sector. And yet, when that spouse died, instead of getting the full widow's benefit, it was slashed by often 40% or even more. Really unfair, and it created a lot of hardship. It
Well, I'm
was
glad.
also a disincentive for people to go into the public sector, to go be a school teacher. So I'm really delighted after all this time we finally fixed the law.
Congratulations. Social Security Fairness Act is going to work for millions of Americans in an equitable way, and conservatives, moderates, independents, liberals, progressives, they all supported it for a good reason. Now, Senator, I took a trip down the Kennebec River this summer, went past the Bath Iron Works, and learned that whereas that river used to produce a destroyer every 17 days in World War II, it now produces one and a half destroyers every year. I don't understand how we got there. What can you do on appropriations to get a SHIPS Act or something like it going?
Well, first of all, we need to acknowledge the fact that we've been falling further and further behind China in the size of our Navy. President Biden's budget for the military was woefully inadequate, not just when it came to shipbuilding, but also had we enacted it, we would have had the smallest air force in history. So this was simply inadequate. Our Navy has shrunk to 296 ships. China, by contrast, is on track to have 435 ships by the year 2030. So we've got to reverse this dynamic. One way we can do it is by having multi year contracts, which will help the shipyards retain skilled workers because they know that the work is going to be there. We have to have a plan to make sure that we have a sufficient number of submarines, of surface ships like destroyers that are built, I say with a great deal of pride, at Bath Iron Works. And we have to also modernize the weapon systems that are on these ships. You know, you've only to look at the role that our destroyers have played in the Middle East and keeping open the shipping lanes in the Mediterranean and the Red Sea by shooting down the Houthi missiles, Houthis being a terrorist group affiliated with Iran that was shooting missiles out of Yemen, to realize how important our surface Navy is in terms of deterrence, but also keeping us safe and helping to protect our staunch ally Israel as well. So we need to up the investment in shipbuilding, and we need to send a demand signal to our industrial base that we're going to build ships in a regular, secure way that they can count on so that they can keep the workforce that they need.
Now, Senator, I know you get along well with Chairman Wicker, who runs Armed Services, probably Ken Calvert, who's Defense Appropriations Subcommittee, and everyone over in the House. But we need a budget resolution to get out of the House that is followed by reconciliation instruction. Are you an optimist that in that first budget resolution there will be funding for and instructions concerning shipbuilding?
I certainly hope so, and I am optimistic. You know, this year, Roger Wicker on the Armed Services Committee was able to get an amendment, was actually last year, to increase the defense budget by $25 billion. I was able to get an additional $21 billion in emergency funding added to the Defense Appropriations Bill, which passed out of the Senate Appropriations Committee unanimously last year. I wish we'd finished up work on those bills last year rather than letting them bleed over into this year. But I think there is increasing understanding of what the combatant commanders all over the world have told me. And that is that this is the most dangerous time in terms of global threats facing our country and our allies since the World War II age. And I think that we need to face up to that fact that we have threats from China, Iran, from Russia, and from North Korea that are all serious, and they're starting to work together. We've seen, for example, the North Koreans send 11,000 troops to assist the Russians in Ukraine. We're starting to see a lot of collaboration between China and Russia, and that is very dangerous for our country.
I couldn't have said it better. I'm so glad you are chair of appropriations, Senator Wicker over at Armed Services, and Leader Thune, along with everyone else in the conference and your Democratic colleagues. I think we're all going to be in this together, and I appreciate your taking some time to talk to us today. Senator Susan Collins of the great state of Maine. Thank you, Chairwoman Collins. Come back again when it's convenient.
Thank you so much, Hugh.